Welcome to the Be Fit podcast. I am Jo Conroy, mum, coach and founder of Be Fit. This podcast is about helping women to eat, move and live in a way that builds strength, energy and confidence at every stage of life. Join me each month for real conversations, tips and inspiration to help you feel strong, confident and completely yourself again. Hello and welcome to the Be Fit podcast. It's a mini podcast supporting midlife women on their health and wellness journey. I am Jo Conroy. I am a menopause and movement coach. And today I have invited in Katie Hodgkinson, who is an expert in hormone health and a doctor in lifestyle medicine. So welcome, Katie. If you'd just like to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Hi, I'm Dr. Katie. So I'm a GP and lifestyle medicine doctor, and I own and run Hampshire Health and Hormones, basically focusing on hormone health, whether it's menopause, other hormonal issues, and focusing a lot on the holistic side of things and medical management if it's indicated. So it's that overall looking at the whole picture and really sort of going into depth in terms of different areas which can support different symptoms.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to fire away with my first question. I'm going to read it off my notepad because I've got terrible memory. So many women come to me in their 40s and 50s and they're starting to notice change in their energy, their sleep, their weight. And this happens before they even realise it's hormone related. And really, I'd just like you to explain the kind of what's happening in their body at this stage. You know, sometimes it can be as early as your 30s, can't it? But what is going on at this stage that is starting to sort of cause these reactions or these changes in the body?
Okay, so think about definitions. So firstly, menopause is defined as 12 months without a period. Average age is 51. And the time before that, the perimenopause, on average, it's about 4 or 5 years before the menopause, but it can be 10 years or more. And those hormonal changes can therefore, it's not uncommon, start in the late 30s. And the 40s. Some women unfortunately go through an early menopause. They can be much earlier than that. So those hormonal changes are starting around then. And we know that hormones are really powerful, in particular estrogen, with receptors in virtually every cell in our body. We can have changes in progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. There are metabolic changes going on as well, changes in our muscle mass. There may be stressors going on, maybe other hormonal factors like thyroid problems going on. So talking through the way that hormones change, and it's different for everyone. Everyone's menopause journey is different. In terms of the kind of typical hormonal changes, the first thing often that usually happens, is progesterone gradually reduces. And then fluctuations occur with estrogen. It can be really quite significant fluctuations. And then overall, you've got a reduction in these hormones. And once you reach menopause, the ovaries shrink and there's minimal production of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone. We know that progesterone has a kind of soothing, calming, relaxing effect and can help with our sleep as well. So if you've got a reduction in progesterone, you might feel that your sleep is worse. You might find that you're a bit more anxious. It also helps to maintain the lining of the womb. So you may find that your menstrual cycle becomes a bit shorter. You might find your periods a bit heavier. We also know that estrogen and progesterone can help with symptoms like our cognition, so our brain health, so our concentration, our memory, our mood, our anxiety levels can often be managed when our hormones are better balanced. So we know that mood changes can occur, weight changes can occur, which I'm going to talk about in a second in more detail. And there can be many other systems affected. And so these symptoms can be quite subtle to start with. So, it might be that you notice maybe you're just not sleeping as well. Maybe you're noticing you've got new premenstrual symptoms for the first time. Maybe your periods are starting to shift. And it can sometimes be quite difficult to pinpoint, could this be perimenopause? Because if your periods haven't really changed, you might not associate that. Or maybe you're just a little bit more sluggish. So it's really just being aware of the different signs and symptoms that can occur in the perimenopause, educating yourself. And thinking, could this be? But at the same time, it's important to make sure that there are not other causes of the symptoms as well. So it's quite a complex web of different things. I did mention testosterone, which is in women as well as men at smaller amounts. it gradually declines with age, and that can cause various symptoms as well. So it's just thinking about all different pathways going on that are being affected by these hormones. Um, and yeah, just being aware that these shifts might be down to the perimenopause.
Yeah, I think you use a really good analogy there. It's like it's a web of information, isn't it? And it's pulling all of that together. Um, I get my clients to, if they're starting to feel some of these symptoms and they're not sure, I always get them to kind of start tracking their symptoms. Is that something that you recommend as well?
Absolutely, and especially it can be really hard. If someone's got the Mirena coil, for example, many women don't have periods with Mirena coil, so they haven't got that period to guide them. But very much worth writing it down, tracking how long your cycle is, how heavy it is. Did you have symptoms before your period? Um, do you get symptoms at ovulation, so mid-cycle? Some women might get them at that point, and it can be sometimes difficult to remember, especially if your concentration memory is affected. So writing it down is useful not only for yourself, but also to bring into if you speak to a doctor or a practitioner, so they can have a look and analyze it as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so next question. This podcast really focuses on the pillars of health, and I know that that's something that you really focus on as well. It's that lifestyle, with nutrition, movement, sleep, hydration, and really importantly, stress management. How much influence can small daily habits in these areas really have at this time?
Yeah, okay. So we can't change the menopause. It happens. We can't change. The hormones are going to fluctuate with time, but we do know that you can influence the effect of those hormones on your symptoms by things like managing our diet, managing our blood sugar, reducing our stress, making sure our sleep is in a better place. So thinking about sleep hygiene, thinking about our gut health, which I often talk to patients about. Looking for other things that might be influencing the hormones. So, for example, vitamin D is a hormone which can impact on other hormones. Nutrients like B12, folate, magnesium can influence on how we process estrogen. So, it's thinking about all those different things together and just acknowledging also that hormones don't just work on their own, they can impact on other hormones. So it's not just right, let's fix your estrogen, everything's fine. It's thinking about all the other pathways going on as well, which can impact on it. So absolutely, diet, lifestyle, managing stress, um, managing, supporting your gut health are all really, really useful factors to help reduce the impact that it otherwise might have on your symptoms. And I see that a lot of patients that have, they've worked on this a lot. And I've got some patients who don't want to take HRT or they can't have it. And we spend a lot of time working on the diet and lifestyle. And I've seen it many times, just the impact that that can have. So, yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it can have that impact kind of on, like you say, the symptoms. I work with lots of, my main demographic is midlife ladies, and I know from like working with exercise specifically that that does have an impact, even if it's just on your mood. Because, like you say, our hormones are chemical messengers. It doesn't mean that they just do one thing. Like you're saying, they influence those different reactions in the body. Because I think that's important to understand, isn't it? That they're messengers creating reactions in the body, and it's not just a simple one-way pathway, is it? It's a bit like the web of kind of the symptoms.
Yeah.
There's a map going on inside the body, and that homeostasis, that balance in the body is it's a fine balance, isn't it?
Usually, and hormones can influence things like our nervous system, our metabolism, our immune system, um, and other hormones as well. So it's, and I think part of it's education as well. So I love just educating patients about all the different things that can impact on that, and I think that helps people to understand what's going on, how they can help themselves. Um, what having this food is doing to them, or if they're not doing the right exercise, or if they're getting the wrong kind of sleep. It's just understanding that different systems can be impacted by how their diet and lifestyle and other factors are.
Yeah, yeah. It's a huge subject, isn't it? We could like talk about this for hours. I say this every time I've got somebody on, like, can we just spend like 3 hours talking about this? Because it's such a big subject. But I think, looking at those small changes that you can make is, can have a big impact, can't they? They can stack up. A
Yeah.
little bit of a change in your movement, a small change in your nutrition, just simply both drinking water today, simply staying hydrated.
Yeah.
Just these little things built up and stacked together can have a big impact on your overall health and well-being. And yes, like you say, it isn't the answer to menopause, but we can make it easier on our bodies, can't we? And how we deal with those symptoms.
Definitely. And I say to patients, look, just because you drink more water is not going to fix X, Y, Z. But it might help with your energy and your sleep and getting rid of toxins and maybe impacting other things. So it's just, as I said, understanding. And it's not to give people, overwhelmed to think, oh my God, I've got to just change my whole lifestyle completely. It's got to be about what's realistic for yourself, what you can achieve. And, often when people start to see those changes, they feel empowered and know that actually I've changed this has happened, and this is how I feel now.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really important thing to say, is it can seem really overwhelming, can't it? And that's, I think, when I speak to women, and I'm sure you find the same, overwhelm quite often comes in to the first kind of three sentences of your conversation of why are you here, what do you need?
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed with the stuff that I'm reading, the stuff that's online, one answer that's, the next product that's being sold on the online of this is the one thing, this is what you need to make in menopause and everything will be okay. And actually they're overwhelmed with all of this information.
Yeah, I think it's interpreting and trying to understand that there is a lot of menopause buzz out there at the moment, which is great. But how on earth do you know whether this supplement or this method is going to help you? So it can be really confusing for patients.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if they do the research, sometimes it can be difficult to know, well, actually, is this right, or is that?
Yeah. And I think that's why talking to somebody like yourself that is a specialist can really be insightful for people, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, just education and understanding, it goes a long way. So
yeah, it's making those informed decisions, isn't it? We work a lot with that in the fitness industry. It's giving people the information that they need to make the decision for themselves. And I think, yeah, cool. Okay, so next one. The most common question that I get asked around the menopause is weight around the middle, or gaining excess weight when you're doing nothing different. You're still going to the gym, you're still eating like a queen, you're on it, but that weight isn't coming off. In fact, it might be going on, and you start to store it around the middle. What's going on metabolically in the body? Just so people, because I think people feel that there's something wrong, even though, again, we're educating that, this does happen in this time. And I think still, it's all, I get asked weekly on this topic.
Yeah, and I have a lot of patients that do find they start to gain weight at perimenopause. It's really not uncommon at all. Maybe they're doing the same amount of exercise, they're eating a clean diet, and it's still going on. So what on earth's going on? So we talked about how hormones can influence on things like metabolism. So you've got the change of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, thinking about the mains of what we call sex hormones. We know that progesterone can help to reduce fluid retention. So when that's low, that can increase fluid retention. Estrogen and testosterone play a role with muscle mass. So when those hormones are declining, you can have a drop in muscle mass, accelerating the drop in muscle mass. So muscle mass will decrease anyway from our 30s, but it can accelerate that. We know that estrogen and testosterone can help support insulin sensitivity. So the opposite to that is insulin resistance. So essentially, our pancreas makes a hormone called insulin, which is released in response to a rise in our blood sugar. So let's just say we've got sugary food, processed foods, our blood sugar will rise. But any kind of stress on the body can also cause a rise of blood sugar, whether we're not sleeping well, whether they've got emotional stress, too much exercise, skipping meals. This can affect cortisol, stress hormone, which can then affect our blood sugar. So when we've got these kind of spikes of blood sugar, then insulin essentially is converting blood sugar to energy, but any excess sugar can be stored as fat. And some people can develop insulin resistance where we're producing insulin but not responding to it. And it can shift where we store the fat. So often women might go from a pear shape to an apple shape, so round the middle spread. Cortisol can further increase the storage of fat, so that can go on. If you've got things like poor sleep going on, that can influence hormones like ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin is a hunger hormone. Leptin's a hormone that tells us when we're full. So that can influence things. Our metabolism is slowing down anyway at this point. So we've got, kind of perfect storm of hormonal changes, more stress going on in the body, our muscle mass is decreasing. Maybe we've got the poor sleep, which can influence our ghrelin and leptin and our blood sugars. So all of this is going on. And so really it's just hence targeting those different areas. And as why, again, management of stress on the body is absolutely key. Management of blood sugar, thinking about your muscle mass, muscle strengthening exercises. Obviously talking about the hormone side of things, maybe HRT might be indicated. So just thinking about all of that, but it can be really demoralizing for poor patients who think, well, actually, I'm doing all the right things. Why on earth am I just gaining? Also imbalances of estrogen, progesterone can impact more on things like fluid retention. So yeah, it's a multifactorial thing that's going on at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's in all of these questions, hasn't it? There's layers to what's going on in the body, and it's not, again, it's not a one thing. It's not a one step answer, is it? And I
Mm-hmm.
think the things that you've talked about there quite a lot is stress, because I think also the weight gain, the tiredness, the brain fog, all of this hires those stress levels as well, doesn't it? And it's something again that I talk to my clients about a lot is how stressed are you? What's your job? What's your daily load? And we talk about that quite a lot. And I have to say, yeah, it's stressful. I've turned 50 this year. And yeah, life is stressful. I've got teenagers, I've got two businesses, and things are changing in my body. I'm not, I am feeling it as well. I'm starting to get forgetful. My patience is definitely shorter. I've definitely got
Yeah.
much to fuse than I used to have, and so my stress levels are higher, with regards to those external factors as well. And, I
Mm.
think like what you're saying, it's you've got what's going on in your body as well, but you've also got those external factors that are different as you age, aren't they?
Yeah, maybe you've got elderly parents who need to care for, kids going through exams or difficult stages, or maybe you just don't. You're at your peak in your career and you just don't have time to think about your diet or your exercise. You're looking after other people as well, and then you've got hormonal changes, meaning you can't sleep, and then everything gets worse if you can't sleep. So it's kind of, yeah, all compounding really.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of it's
Yeah,
those, again,
yeah,
lots of little things kind of stacking up to
yeah.
create maybe that kind of middle kind of weight gain, or that extra weight gain. Yeah,
Mm,
it's interesting, but there are strategies, aren't there, that can help with this. It
mm.
takes time to make those small changes. It's not a overnight answer, but there are strategies that you can put in place.
Absolutely, and there's some generic strategies, but there's also bespoke ones as well. So it depends on what someone is presenting with, and um, yeah, their history of symptoms as well.
Yeah, so I think that's the difference between me,
Mm.
as I'm trained in kind
Mm.
of these lifestyle habits, but they're more generic. And where you come in with your expertise is it's that fine tuning, isn't it? So I think if somebody feels that they're doing everything that they can, speaking to somebody like yourself that can really kind of deep dive into their circumstances, their overall health, other health conditions, their lifestyle, I think that fine tuning, it might be worth having that conversation with somebody like yourself for sure.
Mm. Yeah, so as I said, it's just chatting to someone, finding out what's going on really. So, and there again, there's a lot of information out there, and people will no doubt look into that to find out what can I do to help my weight, etc. Um, there and a lot of those things can absolutely help, but yeah, it's just fine tuning really.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
cool. Right, I've got two more questions. This is the last kind of factual one, is HRT, and I think this is on everybody's lips.
Mm.
And I think we can talk about it and we can say it over and over again, because I think it needs to be reinforced, because women are still scared of taking HRT. And I think there's been a few circumstances recently that have brought that conversation
Yeah,
back up with some celebrities that may have had issues,
yeah.
or health conditions. And it's reignited this: we shouldn't take HRT, it's going to give you cancer. And it's scaring people off taking HRT. Now, whether you're for or against HRT,
Mm.
I think it's really important to have this conversation again, and as many times as we can, to reinforce HRT. What are the risks of HRT?
The first thing is, before you even start thinking about prescribing it, you want someone to have an informed choice. So they know about the risks, the benefits, what it's there for, potential side effects, what types there are, options. And that's really, really key to helping making a decision. So in terms of HRT, it's been around for about 50, 60 years or so. So it's changed a lot since then. So it used to be all synthetic, so horse mare's urine, potential increased side effect risk with that. And now much more commonly prescribed is body identical HRT, which is identical to the hormones naturally produced in the body. You can still get, for example, synthetic progesterone form of HRT. So we think about the overall benefits. So thinking about the fact that you want to take HRT to help with those menopause, perimenopausal symptoms, so for help of your symptoms. Thinking about the behind the scenes benefits as well, so things like helping with your bone protection, helping with heart disease risk. So we know that at menopause, your osteoporosis risk goes up, your heart disease risk goes up, helping with your cognitive health, your brain health. So, so thinking about those factors. With regards to risk, so you mentioned about, yes, recently celebrities coming forward and people being a bit more fearful about taking it, thinking about breast cancer risk in particular. Years ago, unfortunately, there were a generation of women who either stopped taking HRT or didn't want to take it in the first place. So I've headlines about breast cancer and HRT and breast cancer risk. We now know that the risk is much lower than originally thought, so it's considered low risk. But you need to take each individual into account. So it's not a blanket one size fits all. There may be certain, and it's not common, but there may be reasons why someone can't take HRT, but that would be discussed with your practitioner. But by far, the overwhelming majority of women is low risk of breast cancer. One thing to consider, and one of the reasons why someone might come off HRT is if they're intolerant to progesterone. So about 10 to 20% of women might be intolerant to it. And that's more common with the synthetic progesterone than the body identical progesterone. But even if someone has intolerances, doesn't mean necessarily that's the end of their HRT journey. It's thinking about, could we change the way it's given? Could we change the dosing? Maybe it's worth switching to a different form. So it can be sometimes going through different options for that. Getting the dose right as well. A lot of women quite rightly might feel that, right, I'm on HRT, this is going to be my great magic bullet. And it's just understanding that, yes, there's a big cohort of women who may feel absolutely perfect first time when you start HRT, but sometimes you might need to do slight tweaks or changes to the dosing, and there may be other factors going on. So that's another reason why in the majority of my patients, I will get blood tests to look for other causes of symptoms. So, we don't normally do blood tests to diagnose perimenopause. Often estrogen and pituitary hormone called follicle stimulating hormone is normal. So, but it's not uncommon for other things to be playing a role. So yeah, aside from that, it's making sure there's nothing else that could be contributing. So I do see quite a lot of patients who are on HRT and maybe they're not feeling quite right. Now, this is a skewed cohort, I might add. Many women feel absolutely fine, but it's just looking at the different factors which could play a role. But there are an awful lot of benefits to taking HRT. But as I said, it's got to be an informed decision and also discussion about any non-hormonal options for treatment as well. So maybe someone doesn't want to take it, they can't take it. We might be thinking about other options. So, I think it's just having all of that in mind so that someone can make their own decision. It's absolutely not about going, you must take HRT. It's got to be their decision. And, just making sure that they have an understanding about it.
I think having that conversation with your healthcare professional,
Mm.
am I at a higher risk? Running, they've got you go through your health records, so you can make that informed decision, definitely. And not to be scared to have that conversation. If you're worried and you think you need HRT, but you don't want to take it because you're worried of the health risks, have that conversation with a healthcare professional that can go through those risks. Because things like smoking, drinking, being overweight, stress, all of these can have as much of a health risk to your body as taking HRT for some people. Like you say, it's different for everybody, and there may be a reason you can't take it. but some of your simple your lifestyle factors that you're already doing have got as much risk as taking HRT.
If not more. So if we think about breast cancer, so 2 or more units of alcohol every day, so 14 units per week, has got a higher risk than the HRT. Smoking has increased risks. One of the biggies is being overweight. So basically being body mass index 30 or more doubles, even maybe more, doubles your risk of breast cancer. So it's just thinking about those factors really, and comparing, just comparing really, just thinking about, well, actually, perhaps the HRT has a lot lower risk than actually some of those lifestyle factors, as you said, and also the sort of HRT as well. So studies have found that actually there might be a significant reduction in breast cancer risk with the body identical progesterone compared to progestin, but even the progestin is still considered low risk. So into context.
Yeah, brilliant. So one last question. I didn't send you this one. One last question. If you could give kind of 3 tips to help somebody who is thinking they might be perimenopause or starting to get some symptoms, what would your top 3 tips to action like this week be?
Gosh, okay. Well, first thing we talked about was journaling it. So writing down your symptoms. So you listing it. Looking back, and is this a new change? Have I got any changes to my periods? Are they becoming a little bit heavier, a little slightly shorter cycle? Thinking about the pattern about when you're getting the symptoms. So do your symptoms follow a cyclical pattern or not? Doesn't mean if they don't, it's not hormonal, but often things to start with might follow a cyclical pattern. Thinking about, do I need to get some tests to look for other reasons for these symptoms? If you're young, and it's slightly different guidelines. If you're below the age of 40, then often we do blood testing for follicle stimulating hormone and estrogen. But I wouldn't rule it out just because in your 20s, 30s, or early 30s. Okay, it's uncommon, but some women do get that, unfortunately, an early menopause. So I think 3 things is firstly, looking at your symptoms, looking at your lifestyle as well. Are there any changes you could make in your lifestyle which might be impacting it? Are you having a lot of sugar in your diet? Are you not drinking enough? Are you, I mean, these are just examples, are you eating really close to bed? Are you just being really inactive? Have you gained weight? Potentially, could that be playing a role as well? So I think looking at your lifestyle, looking at the stress that you're under. And I think the third thing is that if you think there's a problem, then really just looking at avenues where you might want to seek some help to get your answers or get your support with those issues.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. And I think that's really, really great advice, simple advice that people that are kind of teetering, should I do something? I think that's some really great advice, Katie. So thank you so much for coming on today. I think you've given some really insightful information and some top tips for people to action. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great chatting. I hope you've enjoyed being on with me.
It's been great. Thanks for inviting me. It's really it's great what you're doing here. I think it's really helpful for lots of people.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to sign us off. And brilliant. Thank you for coming on.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
And thank you guys for coming and listening to this podcast today. Please drop any additional questions in the comments. We've put a few helpful links into the comments, some places we can signpost you to for more information to read as well. So thank you.